Found pretty much in the middle of absolute nowhere in the Indian Ocean is an Australian territory with a very interesting name. Now, of course, you've seen the title of the video, so you know I'm talking about Christmas Island. But why exactly does it belong to the Australians? What is life like there? And most importantly, why is it called Christmas Island? To find out, let's swim down from Java, Indonesia and investigate. So first things first, let's take a look at where exactly this island is found, geographically speaking. So if you were in Western Java, Indonesia and swam about 350 kilometers south, you'd end up in Australia. Not mainland Australia, but Christmas Island. Or if you happen to be somewhere near Exmouth in northwestern mainland Australia and sailed a boat some 2,000 kilometers northwest, you'd again arrive at Christmas Island. The territory comprises of pretty much one single island. There are surrounding rocks and islets, but nothing major enough to consider the territory an archipelago. The island covers an area of some 135 kilometers squared, which incredibly is larger than 5 UN countries, and just some 25 kilometers squared smaller than Liechtenstein. So let's now discuss the elephant in the room. Why exactly is it called Christmas Island? Maybe they just really love Christmas, or perhaps they celebrate Christmas all year long. Well, as fun as that would be, its name originates from the day that it was discovered by Europeans, which, you guessed it, was the 25th of December in the year 1643 by a Captain William Mynors, the commander of a ship part of the English East Indian Company. We must be in a pretty large room as there's yet another elephant which must be discussed. If an Englishman discovered the island, why do the Australians now own it? Well, as just mentioned, the island was discovered in 1643, but no one actually settled upon it. It wasn't until the 19th century did the British Empire realise that it had some worth, not just for strategic positioning, but for its abundance of phosphate. Something that is essential for agriculture. It wasn't until 1888 that the Brits would formally annex the island. Workers from places like China, Malaysia and Singapore poured onto the island to work as miners. Some 70 years after the annexation, the Brits then decided to gift the island to Australia. But why exactly? Well, in case you haven't noticed, the UK is pretty far away from Christmas Island, in fact some 11,000 kilometers away. So it somewhat made sense to hand over the ownership to their close friend and deep ally, the Australians. Seeing as though they're found so much closer, and if needs be, they could still easily access and use the island. However, it is worth noting that there was another country who once owned the island, well, occupied. Any ideas who? I'll give you a clue, it was in 1942, and no, it wasn't the Germans. So the story goes that there was a mutiny within the British on the island, allowing the Japanese to essentially take over the island without any questions asked. The Japanese then occupied the island for around 3 years in total, to which they returned it back to the Aussies with their formal surrender in 1945. Alright, so now that we've got that out the way, let's take a look at what life is actually like there. I don't know why, but I'm really fascinated in learning about how people live their lives in really random, obscure places, especially islands where the people and fauna and flora are cut off from the rest of the world. In fact, per unit area, it's one of the most endemic rich islands in the world, with some 63% of its terrestrial animals found nowhere else on the planet, and somewhere within a quarter of its plants too. But we'll speak more about that later. For now, let's take a look at its interesting demographics. So as mentioned earlier in the video, a lot of Chinese and Malaysians moved to the island for its thriving mining opportunities. The effects of this migration pattern can still clearly be seen today, as those with Chinese ancestry make up about 20% of its 1,700 population. About 15% are of Australian ancestry and roughly the same Malayan, about 12% English, 4% Indonesian and the rest from various backgrounds from around the world. With the territory belonging to the Aussies, English is the official language and is used for government, schools and all public signs. Many residents also speak Hakka, Mandarin, Malay or other languages at home, but public life operates primarily in English. Now, as you'd expect from such a diverse island, religion is also pretty varied there too. It's a bit of a tie between Islam and Buddhism for the most followed religion, at about 20% of the population each. You've then got Christianity somewhere around 15%, and then about half of the island are non-religious. So enough about demographics, let's take a look at what the island actually looks like, starting off with its capital, Flying Fish Cove. It's not really a capital city, so to speak, but more the main settlement and administrative centre where most of the island's population lives. And, well, this is it. Within the tiny harbour, you'll find the island's administrative offices, police, ferry terminals, schools, religious sites, and some small shops. There really isn't a lot going on this island. After all, its population is actually low enough to fit entirely within Marina 101, Dubai's second tallest building. Other than Flying Fish Cove, there's a tiny settlement named Silver City, mainly used to house workers linked to mining. And there's also a Poon San, which is predominantly a tiny Chinese community. So the island itself is volcanic, meaning it's rather rugged and hilly. Some 60% of the island is covered in tropical rainforest. Its coastline consists of rocky cliffs, sandy beaches with coral reefs surrounding the island. Murray Hill is the highest point on the island, standing some 361 meters high. That's actually kind of impressive. To put this in perspective, this hill is higher than any point found in countries of the likes of Belarus, Estonia or Kuwait. So as mentioned earlier, the population of the island is only around 1700. It's also extremely remote, which means its economy is of course very small. It's been a good 15 years since the last official GDP figures were released, which was in 2010, $52 million US. So at the time of making this video, it's probably somewhere in the region of maybe $60 million now, which spread out across its small population gives a GDP per capita of some $35,000 US. That's about half of what can be found on the Australian mainland, but some 7 times greater than what's found in Indonesia. There are 3 main sectors on the island, of course being phosphate mining, government services, and a small tourism economy. Perhaps one of the biggest attractions for tourists and what the island is most well known for, other than its intriguing name, is its red crab migration. During its rainy season, between October and December, tens of millions of giant red crabs migrate from its rainforests into the sea, creating these kind of scary but crazy scenes. Roads are often closed or have special crab crossings, and traffic is heavily managed to protect the crabs from getting squished. But in order to witness this event, you actually need to get to the island first, which is a little tricky. For me in the UK, it would be a good old 45-hour journey flying across the world to Perth and then flying directly from there. Flights from Perth take around 5 hours, and a return trip will set you back about 1,000 Aussie dollars. So as you'd expect from such a small island with a low population, its airport is absolutely tiny, seeing only 9 flights per month to Perth. And although being found not too far away from Jakarta, there are no direct flights between the two. This is mainly due to the fact that less than 5% of the island's population are of Indonesian descent. And to finish off this video, let's take a quick little look at its flag. It's rather quirky and interesting. So you've got a green and blue background, which represents its forests and the Indian Ocean. You've then got a golden Buson bird in the middle, which is native to the island. And finally, the stars represent the Southern Cross constellation, the same constellation found on the Australian national flag. So there we have it, the small but interesting Christmas island in a nutshell. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and as always, thanks so much for watching.